Wow, that was exciting. Welcome, welcome. This is Gabe Hernandez, publisher in EIC of ComicalOpinions.com. It is Monday morning, August 21st, 2023. I'm happy to have you here, and this is our video version of our weekly newsletter, and I'm happy to have you along, and let's talk about our big op-ed piece for the week. This time we're going to do something a little bit different. Rather than talking about some sort of hot button topic or controversial development over the past week, we're going to do a little bit of a how-to, or at least just helpful tips and tricks related to something that we see a lot. I review a lot of comics every single week, either writing them directly, co-writing them with somebody else, or editing them. I just get bombarded with comics every single week, and invariably, when that happens, you start to see little problems that crop up that are pretty repetitive or very consistent across big publishers, small publishers, indie submissions, just all across the range of comics that we get every single week. And one of the problems that we see, I won't say frequently, but often enough to that it can be a consistent problem, is when people have boring characters. And it's definitely a problem when you want somebody to remember your comic. They can't do that if the characters that are in it, either the main character, we sometimes refer to that as the MC, just in shorthand, or just the cast of characters that surround them are just boilerplate, boring, vanilla. We want to avoid that problem, and we want to make the comics better. So to do that, we have to make sure that when we're writing comics, we're writing comics with characters that are interesting, that are engaging, that are going to be characters that the reader remembers. So I'm not the end all be all when it comes to writing scripts, writing comic books, and just writing in general. I've done my fair share, but I'm going to lean on some folks that are much more accomplished than I am. And in this case, we're going to lean on famed, acclaimed scriptwriter Aaron Sorkin, and he has a post, or at least there's an article written about it, an interview that he did, and the article is termed "7 Tips for Creating Memorable Characters." Now, we're not going to reproduce that article. You can read it for yourself, and there's a link in the newsletter. But we are going to do is recreate it, but twist it a little bit to focus specifically on character creation. And hopefully, it's going to be helpful for folks that are subscribers to our newsletter, folks that follow our website, who are indie creators or work for some of the mainstream publishers that are struggling with this topic. So hopefully, so we're going to take his topics, we're going to make them comic specific, and let's see how it goes. So the first tip, and this is in no particular order. The first tip is know the character's motivations and make them obvious to the reader. Uh, it all starts with the character motivation. If you don't understand why characters are doing what they're doing, if you don't understand what's driving them to make decisions, what's forcing down the path that they're taking, their actions can come across as random, especially when they don't make sense or aren't clear because you're trying to build some intrigue and mystery around what the characters are doing. Uh, the perfect example we have is Batman. Everything that is Batman, from young adult to adult and beyond, when he's older in the Batman Beyond series, it's all motivated by that action in Crime Alley where his parents were killed by Joe Chill. That one event motivates everything that Batman does. Now, you may not agree with what he does, you may not like what he does, or you may think he's kind of crazy for what he does, but you understand where he's coming from and what's driving him forward. So it all starts with a character motivation, and you have to make that clear somewhere within the context. Usually, if it's a new character within the context of the first script, you have to make that obvious, and people have to understand what's pushing the character forward, what's fueling their journey. Second, you have to make their actions relatable. Uh, when your character is motivated by an event, and it could be multiple events or it can be a single one, the actions have to match the motivation. So, for example, if somebody's motivated by a traumatic event, say they were harmed by a bully as a child, and they just have a extreme adverse hatred of bullying. Well, when they get older, if they see bullying but but they react to it by laughing or telling jokes, or they're dismissive about bullying, that action doesn't match the motivation. So you have to make sure that they're making actions that make sense with the motivation that's backing it up and it's pushing them forward. So as long as you can kind of get those two to pair together cleanly and in a way that the average human can make sense out of, then that's going to help that character make sense when they're going through the journey of whatever the plot dictates. Next is it helps extremely or tremendously, I should say, if they have a moral compass. I'm going to pick on the Batman example once again. Batman has a moral compass. One of the primary facets of that moral compass is he has a do not kill rule, or a do not kill law. That informs every decision he makes when he's fighting his rogues gallery, when he's going through Gotham and stopping villains or fighting crime, or doing whatever he's doing. That is one rule that he has that he carries him through everything that he does. It makes it easier for a writer if you can establish that moral compass right up front. The reason that's easier is because you can create villains, and you can create danger or drama scenarios that work exactly against his moral compass. So, for example, he's constantly being criticized for not killing the Joker. Well, that's because that is a perfect motivation, or a not motivation. Don't want to use that word too much. That is a perfect catalyst for creating drama, because you have somebody who seems incapable of being stopped unless you kill him, faced with a hero who will not kill. That's a perfect recipe for drama. That's a perfect recipe for conflict. So when you establish that moral compass, you give the character opportunities for drama, opportunities for conflict. That makes for interesting reading and interesting storytelling, and it also makes the decisions that he makes at every step of the way along your story easier to understand. So if you have a no killing rule and you put him in a scenario where he has a choice of killing or not killing, you know which one he's going to take. You know which choice he's going to make. And so that makes it easier, but it also gives you an opportunity for conflict. Realistic is boring. Don't make your characters too realistic. If your character is too grounded, too average, too commonplace for where we are in the real world, that makes it much harder to create the opportunities for drama, both in the way they speak, the dialogues they have, how the scenes play out. Not everything we do every day in the real world is rife with conflict. I mean, it could be, and if you're in that scenario, I'm sorry for you. Let's see if we can let me know so we can find you some help. But you want drama, you want conflict. You can't do that if every character in every scenario is grounded and realistic, because that's boring. People don't talk necessarily in dramatic ways all the time. People don't make dramatic actions all the time. And so if you make your characters too grounded, too realistic, it becomes very boring. And conversely, if you're trying to create a character who is intentionally supposed to be very grounded and very sort of average and humdrum, make do that to the extreme. Make them so humdrum that they almost come off like white noise, that there's something almost off-putting about it. Even boring characters can be interesting as long as you push them to not be too realistic. Next, here's a big one. Even though this is the shortest section of the op-ed, let them struggle. Characters have to go through struggles. They have to go through failures. They have to go through challenges that they can't beat right away, at least not without growing and evolving and trying over and over again. That's where the term Mary Sue comes from. And everybody sort of overuses that term, but that's truly what that means, is when you have a character that solves problems without any struggle, that's a Mary Sue. You don't want that, because Mary Sue characters are perfect characters, and perfect characters are not relatable characters because they're not believable. Everybody has to go through struggles. And so we want to relate to these characters and connect with them and bond with them so we can remember them. The way you do that, part of the way where you do that, everything on the list is the way you do that, but you have to let them go through some kind of struggle or failure. They have to stumble and they fall so they can get back up. People understand that and they can relate to that. So you've got to let your character struggle a little bit or a lot. Make them sound natural. Okay, this is a dialogue piece. Uh, we see this a lot with dialogue that sounds stiff, that sounds clunky, that sounds just unnatural. And the reason that happens is because people try to put in things like turns of phrases because they want to make the character sound smart, or they want to try to give their characters a southern accent, or they want to try and give their characters sort of make them sound more urban or more rural, or they're trying to make them sound like they're from a specific country, and it just really usually does not come off too well. It's hard to do. It's not hard to figure out, but it is sometimes hard to fix depending on the kind of character you're trying to create. It's more important that the character sounds natural, even if the voice the character is speaking sounds a little bit too much like yourself. Make the character sound natural, and the way you can easily check that is read the dialogue out loud. I know for a fact there are too many writers that will write dialogue for multiple characters, and they haven't read it out loud, because when you read it in your mind, it sounds stiff. It sounds clunky. If you're writing dialogue, read it out loud. It has to sound natural. It has to sound authentic to two people conversing. And if it doesn't sound natural, that's how you know you got to fix it. Um, and then the last one, which is 7 tips in total. The last one, which is a little bit, I won't say not something that you don't have to take care of, or something that you don't have to be mindful of because the artist is doing the work, but you have to give them space within the script to allow the artist to do the work, and that's acting. When you're writing a script for TV or film, there's a certain reliance on the actors and the director to let the scene play out, and sometimes that makes little tweaks and adjustments to the film script that's written. In comics, it's actually the same way, except instead of having characters and people that are acting, the artist is doing the acting through the art that they're presenting on the page. Comics are a visual medium. You have to do it that way. So you make sure that you include in the script room for the artist to allow the characters to express themselves, usually a little bit bigger than naturally would happen from people that are interacting within some kind of emotional beat or some kind of emotional scene. Add a little exaggeration, but give them the space to do that, saying, I want this character to be angry at point A. I want this character to be sad at point B. I want this character to be excited at point C. But don't try and control that too much. Let the artist express that emotion through the script that you're presenting. Um, give them a little room to play, but give them enough that they can adequately express the emotional state through hand gestures, through the way they're standing, through the way they're expressing through the eyes and through their mouth, so that they can convey that emotional experience in addition to what the script is calling for, primarily through the dialogue. So hopefully that was helpful. I know this is really not really an op-ed. This is really more of like a how-to, but it's a very loose how-to. The article is going to be up in our newsletter. It's also going to be up on ComicalOpinions.com. We'll make it sticky for the week, so you can read through it. But let us know what you think. I mean, if you're a writer, either indie or working for one of the mainstream publishers, is this list helpful for you, or is there something we forgot? Let us know down in the description below, and we'll make some adjustments. And if we do make some adjustments, we'll cite you and call you out for it. So I appreciate that very much. So that's our op-ed piece. We're going to take a quick second. We're going to hop over to the newsletter and talk about the reviews for last week and the reviews that are coming up for this week. Okay, but before we do that, we're going to have a little survey that's in our newsletter. The survey is only available for subscribers, so if you subscribe, you can fill out the survey. This video version of the newsletter seems to be kind of a hit with people. They're liking it, and we're getting comments, we're getting views, and that's great. That's also a shameless plug for you to like, share, and subscribe down below. Thank you very much if you would do that, please. We're thinking about taking the audio version of this newsletter and publishing it also as a podcast for people who like to listen to it on the way into work, or while they're walking the dog, or doing whatever it is they're doing. So if that's the case, let us know what podcast services you typically use. If it's Google, if it's Apple, if it's Spotify, Podbean, whatever it is. For our subscribers, we've got a space on the newsletter where you can cast your vote, and whichever one makes the most sense, that's the one we'll go with. We want to make sure that we're giving you value every step of the way. So if you don't have access because you're not a subscriber, just go ahead and subscribe. It's free for the basic tier, although we would love to have you as a as a paid subscriber, because you get some cool stuff like custom wallpapers and all kinds of things that are coming up that's going to make a big difference for to help us support the site. So subscribe, fill out the survey, let us know. So let's talk about the reviews for the week. First up, we have two indie submissions, and we try to do at least 2 a week. First one is Battle Code Ragnarok, which is a nice Western manga inspired Western comic about a super team. And that was actually, it's a really well done indie submission. So I'd recommend you check that out. I'm sorry, Battle Rock. I got them reversed. Battle Code Ragnarok is Space Vikings, and that's actually an interesting concept. So you might want to check that one out. Jazz, which is Juggernauts against Zealots. That's the manga-inspired Western comic. So go ahead and actually check them both out. They're pretty decent. We have Void Rivals #3, which is Kirkman's space adventure that ties into the Transformers universe. We have a lot more Transformer deep cuts in Void Rivals #3. So if you like Transformers, check that out. Red Sonja Volume 7, Number 2. That's the continuation of the 50th anniversary run for Red Sonja. Next up, we have our pick of the week, which is We Are Scarlet Twilight number 4 from Red 5 Comics. That's the end of Captain Lancet's adventures in Cyberpulp, where he faces off against Madame Satanica and her Scarlet Twilight cult. That's our pick of the week, and it's a very strong ending to a very strong series. We liked it a lot. We have Betty Page, Volume 6, Number 3. That's a really fun, amusing kind of comedy of errors type comic book starring Betty Page. Oz, Kingdom of the Lost, Number 1 from Zenescope. We're going back to Oz, but we're finally getting back to um, getting some attention for Nicholas the Tin Man, who's been absent for a long time since his body was shut down. Under the Influence number 2 from Mad Cave. That's an interesting take on influencer ecosystems and how influencers have the potential to turn into cults among younger people. So that's an interesting comic right there. Antarctica number 2. That's the from Image Comics. That's the alternate universe sci-fi adventure in the Antarctic arena. Tox number 2, which is the pandemic-inspired dystopian sci-fi horror comic from Blood Moon Comics. Grit and Gears number 5, which is the steampunk Old West comic, also from Blood Moon Comics, and that's a pretty neat one as well. You have Disney Villains Hades number 1. This is the next Disney villain cartoon character that Dynamite is picking up, and actually that one was a lot of fun. So if you like Hades from the Hercules cartoon movie, they capture the voice of the character pretty well there. So that's a lot of fun. You have Disney Villains Maleficent number 4, also from Dynamite Comics, and that's continuing the story of Maleficent's conflict with some princes who came by who were up to no good. Monomyth number 4 from Mad Cave Studios. That is the continuation of David Hazan's sorcery adventure with people who are transported to this magical castle against their will. And Dead Company Volume 1 from Tokyo Pop. This is the next volume. And it's an interesting horror story about a young man who gets a job at a video game company that specializes in death battle royale type match games. So that's great week. And again, our pick of the week is We Are Scarlet number 4. Coming up this week, it's a long list, but so hold on your hats. We have Grave Brigade number 1, indie submission. Santos Sisters number 4. Also in an indie submission from Dynamite, we have Vampirella versus the Superpowers number 4. We like that series a lot. Battle Chasers number 12 from Joe Maggs from Image Comics. Big Game number 2. This is Mark Millar's big crossover event for the summer. King Spawn number 25, also from Image Comics, where we've got Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 111 from Boom. King Kong, The Great War, number 3 from Dynamite. Starfinder, Angels of the Drift, number 2 from Dynamite. The Mighty Barbarians, number 5 from Ablaze, and that's been an interesting one from Michael Morrissey. Blade Runner 2039, number 6 from Titan. Keys of Cthulhu, the one shot. This is sort of starting to wrap up the whole year of Lovecraft from Zenescope. Darkwing Duck number 8 from Dynamite. Exorcist number 5 from Mad Cave. That's Steve Orlando's Descent Through the Seven Deadly Sins. Gunbreed number 2 from Blood Moon Comics. Robin Hood number 100 from Zenescope. That is an anniversary issue, so that's going to be oversized. And Necronomicon one shot from Zenescope, again wrapping up the year of Lovecraft. So that's it for this week. Thank you very much for joining us. Again, if you like this video and you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them down below. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is Gabe Hernandez from Comical Opinions. Have a great Monday, and I will talk to you soon.